Today, it seems like everybody wants to tell you what to do with your life. They'll say, buy these shoes, go on this vacation, study this major. And for the small, inconsequential decisions, it's okay to listen to the advice of strangers. But for the bigger decisions, the ones that will require your commitment, your time, and your money, perhaps there's another way to discern. Is college still worth it? To answer that question, we came to the Cardinal Newman Society Leaders Summit here at the UST campus, which is bringing in educational leaders from across the United States. Now, I know we're an educational institution, and of course we're going to be a little biased, but I promise you, we're going to do our best to be objective. To start, we're going to talk to Kevin Murphy, Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the Cardinal Newman Society. For those people who find that their yes is going to college, how do you make it a worthwhile experience? How do you get the most out of it?
When I went to college, I let college happen to me, all right? And many people do this. They go to college, they don't really know what they want to do. I used to always say the number one career choice on campus is undeclared, right? I mean, if you think about it, I bet if you go to any college, you say, how many here don't know what they want to do? I would say that's the number one major. And then what happens is the number two major is usually the broadest major on campus, right? Like a business administration.
Yeah, general studies.
General studies, and they pick that and they go, okay, I'm doing general studies. Because you know what? They still don't know and haven't really wrestled with what God wants them to do. And it's very difficult, right? I mean, it's because people pitch everything to you. They say you have to do this or you should do that. I say what they need to do is they really need to be in tune with God's grace and find out what God wants of them. And again, then make the most use of it. You know, one of the things that Mary gives us as an example is she said yes, which is a full assent to the will of God. So then God says, I want you to be X. You say yes, and then you got to go out and what I say, joyfully collaborate with him. Go out and do what you think God's calling you to do. And there's going to be difficulties, right? I mean, I don't care who you are. Elon Musk has difficulties, right? I mean, the richest people in the world have difficulties. If you understand that God gave you a particular vocation, those become manageable, right? If not, then it becomes very difficult and you're going to find yourself, I've seen this many, many times, people pursue money and they find themselves extremely unhappy.
I bet you didn't see that answer coming, but it's so true. Focusing on what Christ is calling you towards in your life is the move. But what if that calling is calling you towards college? How do you make the most of it then? So what I'm hearing is that college shouldn't be a passive experience. It needs to be not only just an active experience, but one where you're delving into the depths of yourself, into the depths of God's will, and really putting in work to discern that.
That's exactly right. Because again, if you just, and for some, I don't know if I always use myself as this example, but again, I let college kind of happen to me. And I finally said to myself when I was in college, I was about, junior, and I said, I think I have this skill in writing. I'm going to start going towards that. And then I started working for the college newspaper, and I started covering sports and features, and then I started saying that, I think this is it for me. And I've been in communication ever since, in one form or fashion. That's what I think happens, but the thing you have to do is you have to put yourself in a state of grace to where you're listening to God. Because if you don't do that and you just go along, you just go to college, I don't know, what are you taking? I don't know, I'm taking some classes. Any of them you're interested in? Not really. Mom and dad aren't going to be happy, first of all. Second of all, I don't think you're going to find what God wants. Now, you can try different things. That's what you should do. Inquire about the will of God. But if you don't put yourself in that state of grace to listen to him, you may never, really find it and find the happiness that he has for you, because he has a specific purpose for your life.
So we talked about discerning whether or not college is right for you and how to make the most of that opportunity. But I have one more question. What are we supposed to get out of a college education, specifically a Catholic one? To answer that question, I'm going to talk to Mark Brumley, President and CEO of Ignatius Press.
The Catholic University really should be helping students ask and answer three questions. First, how do I make a life? Second, how do I make a living? And third, how do I get to heaven and bring as many people with me as I can? So how do I make a life is the first question. We think the university, well, that's really the question, how do I make a living? But to make a living well as a disciple of Jesus, you have to have some understanding of what it means to live a good life. That's why I think it's so important to have a liberal arts or liberal education core, like we do here at UST. Okay, so Catholic institutions that focus on Jesus Christ, the faith of the church as core, as foundational, and then out from that, liberal education, liberal arts, to enable us to form young people to make a life. How am I going to live my life well, be a lifelong learner, and so on. That's point one. Point two, how do I make a living? So our universities have helped young people discern what their vocations are, and within their vocation in the classical theological sense, what am I going to do for a living? If they're liberally educated and they're educated in their specialization, they have to be both. You don't want to be an educated ignoramus. That's what a specialist is, who is not liberally educated as well. But then the third point is making a way to heaven, making disciples, yourself a disciple and other people. So that's what I see the vision of a Catholic institution of higher education being, whether that is a university or you have trade schools or professional schools. That core liberal education is the foundation, centered in the Catholic sense of that, but our specializations and our other things which are going to be part of how we live well and live well as disciples.
College can be worth it if you're going for the right reason. And yes, getting a good job, good pay, and the skills you need in a particular industry are great. The most important thing to ask yourself is, does this help me do God's will? And look, I know this is a stressful time in your life, so I want to leave you with some words of encouragement from Kevin Murphy.
God has a purpose for your life. He knows you by name, and He knows what gifts He's given you. And what He wants you to do is collaborate with His will to see those two.
That's it for this episode. If you have any questions you've been dying to have answered, send them our way at macstudios@sttom.edu or send us a DM on Instagram at macstudiosust. Thanks for watching.